Okay. Uh, I usually start my lectures across continents by saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. So it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Of course, this is a normal time I get up, so I have no issue at all. I'm going to divide my talk into 4 parts because it's an international audience, maybe a minute or two on the Indian healthcare scenario. And just to ensure that we are on the same page, what exactly we mean by telehealth, telemedicine. I personally like the word telehealth rather than telemedicine. Medicine implies a one-to-one relationship, even if it is virtual care, diagnosis and treatment. Whereas now, but ever, in fact, for all these several thousand years, but particularly in the era of the pandemic, what we require is health, not prevention of, management of diseases. I'm also going to spend about 8 to 10 minutes on illustrations of public-private partnership, social investing, as Professor Aimike calls it, deploying telehealth in the BC era. I used to start all my talks by saying that I am the last neurosurgeon, the last batch of neurosurgeons in India who were trained in the BC era, before Christ and before computers, at that time, one and the same. When I qualified as a neurosurgeon, there was no CT scan in the country. But today, the word BC is used as before Corona and after Corona. I really think, or COVID, whatever you want to call it. I think thousands of years later, when we talk about different eras, we are going to mention this as a new era. And finally, I'm going to illustrate to you with examples from all over India how a strand of RNA became the global CTO for telehealth, Chief Transformation Officer for telehealth. For 24 years, some of us have been working day in and day out. We were laughed at, we were ridiculed, everybody rubbished the concept of virtual healthcare, remote healthcare. But in the last 100 days, at least not only in India, all over the world has changed completely. Now, I need to mention this because you need to get the background. First of all, please remember that every 6th human on planet Earth lives in India. The population of India is roughly 4 times that of the United States of America. But at the same time, India is a paradox. On the one hand, we have centers which are better than the best. We get about 150,000 people from all over the world for complex surgical procedures, including those from the United States and advanced countries. But unfortunately, the distribution of beds, the distribution of doctors, whatever you call it, nurses, etc., is lopsided. There is a significant urban-rural health divide. And I don't think in the lifetime of my great-great-grandchildren, this is ever going to be addressed with brick-and-mortar hospitals. The slide here speaks for itself. I'm not going to repeat what is mentioned here. Now, what do I mean by telemedicine? Telemedicine is a broad term encompassing all that goes to make it possible to examine a patient virtually, making distance meaningless, able to communicate with him or her wherever the doctor and the patient is. The word doctor and patient is today being replaced by the words healthcare provider and beneficiary. Particularly in the pandemic era, we are not talking of the person who is already sick. We want to promote wellness the E-way. We want to promote health literacy, patient empowerment, knowledge empowerment, and so on. For a good telemedicine unit, you require hardware, you require customized software which is cost-effective, need-based, appropriate technology, using what is relevant for that particular situation. It has to be contextual. Of course, the most important thing is connectivity. Right now, I'm sitting in my house and I can talk to every one of you. Excellent audio, excellent video. This not only in Chennai, which is the 2nd largest city in India, but it's slowly becoming available even in Tier 2 cities. Today, India has a staggering 70% rural tele-density. And in Delhi, the tele-density is 180%. For every 100 people in Delhi and in Chennai, you have 180 SIM cards. So that tells you about the connectivity in this country. Again, we need to acquire images. We need to store images, laboratory reports. We need to retrieve this. We need to display this. We need to digitally manipulate an X-ray, a CT scan, an ultrasound, an MRI, whatnot. So all this goes into making a good telemedicine unit. Now, I always say, do not make the mistake which I made 20 years ago. I had no idea that the future is ahead of schedule. We were just not future ready at that time. And today, technology is improving so fast that I very strongly advise anybody who wants to get into telemedicine to prepare for 2025, not even 2020. Of course, there has to be formal training, customization, and this is one message which we have learned the very hard way. In the next 30-40 minutes, I want to share with you the mistakes I made, the lessons we learned, rather than talk about the good things we do. We learned the very hard way that though we started as a not-for-profit foundation in 1999, we learned that only revenue generation will help sustain a program. Philanthropy at its best can initiate a program, but believe me, it will die a natural death. And of course, we are following in the US, but if you would pardon this statement, we are not as paranoid as I personally think some of the regulatory authorities are in the United States. We still have the word trust to some extent, but then we need to be compliant with regulations. So compliance and adherence is extremely important. Just a quick example of what exactly I mean by telediagnosis. The top 3 photographs are illustrations of dermatological conditions. Now, teledermatology is the simplest, 99% accuracy, no possibility of a mistake, provided you have got a good history, you know exactly how these problems arose, etc. I think it's a crime today, not only in India, but anywhere in the world, to make anybody travel 100 miles, 500 miles, 3,000 miles so that a surgeon can see a scar. Now, this young baby had a complex cardiac surgery, came from northeastern India, 2,000 miles away. Today, of course, 90% of our teleconsultations, review cases, we tell them not to come. We want to reduce footfalls to the hospital, and you can see with an ordinary camera, the cardiac surgeon can focus on the wound. With a digital stethoscope, we can hear heart sounds, lung sounds, etc. Distances become absolutely immaterial. The boy on the lower side, you can see a huge swelling in the neck. This is called multinodular goiter. Today, it is possible for us to actually even reasonably well find out whether this is solid, whether this is cystic, whether there is water inside, fluid inside, etc. by asking a person at the other end just to press on it. Again, I can put a stethoscope on the thyroid and I will be able to hear the sounds of blood flowing through the thyroid, which enables me to see the vascularity of the tumor. On the lower left, you see a patient from Bangladesh who was referred to me 25, 15, 16 years ago. Though I'm a neurosurgeon, this was outside my particular area of interest. I didn't know how exactly to manage. So what did I do? I got 3 specialists. I got 3 specialists from Apollo Hospital, 3 different specialists. All of them evaluated this boy from Bangladesh and told him what is to be done. On the lower left, you can see this is something which now I realize was absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, a problem we have in India is we are so overwhelmed with the clinical load, and Apollo Hospital is a corporate hospital. It's not a university, though we are involved in teaching to a large extent, increasing extent. I just don't have residents, I don't have junior doctors, etc. And therefore, we were not able to publish this. As early as 2001, when the rest of the world had absolutely no idea, we were doing pediatric echocardiograms. I don't know whether this you will be able to see this video and audio at your end. I've just switched on the video. I can hear the blood flowing through the upper chamber into the lower chamber. And believe me, this was done in the village of Aragonda, an absolute village, Dr. Pratap Reddy's birthplace. This was mentored, telementoring by a pediatric cardiologist. And you can actually see the date on the photograph. This was in October 2001. We did more than 200 patients before our cardiologist went elsewhere. So this is what, just a very quick background on telemedicine. Next couple of minutes, as Dr. Aimike had specifically requested me, this is on public-private partnerships which you are doing confined to healthcare. Now, obviously, we, to the best of my knowledge, are the largest player in public-private partnership in telehealth, not only in India, but perhaps anywhere in the globe. You can see we have a couple of months ago covered 10 million teleconsultations over the last 6 years only in public-private partnerships. Our first public-private partnership was in the Himalayas. Several papers have been published on this, and today we have about 8 major projects all over the country. I'm very confident that with the onset of the pandemic, the government is going to realize that public-private partnerships are the only way to do it. I've been here twice, and this is how the Himalayas, or certain portion of the Himalayas, Kaza and Keelong we call it, in the district of Lahul and Spiti. It's only about 25 miles away from the China border, and this was where we went. The people whom you see in the middle frame are not laborers. A big mistake I made was I had no idea. When we signed the contract, I thought there would be labor there, but my staff went there, and then to our horror, we found there was no labor there. And some of these people have a master's degree in computer applications. One of them is an MBA and so on. But I have a fantastic team, and somehow we are not flattening the curve. The telehealth concept in my team at least is infectious, contagious, and this wonderful team which I had, you can see what they're doing. We set up VSATs, we set up everything, and on the lower right you can see an emergency room similar to what you would see in Colombia perhaps. So this was started 5 years ago, the first of its kind, and our excellent success prompted the government to start, other state governments have started similar projects. As of 3 days ago, again, I have an outstanding system. If I was younger probably or more enthusiastic, I could have got these statistics updated 2 hours ago. That is what we do. We have a real-time dashboard, and you can see as on 30th June, we had treated more than 18,712 patients. This is not by itself a huge number, but when you recollect that the entire population of this isolated district, where the temperature is minus 25 degrees centigrade for 5 months in a year, all roads are blocked due to landslide, helicopter evacuations, which are extremely difficult, were what was required. You must understand that we have become very popular. In fact, the government was forced to renew our contract because the public, represented by the local MLA, Member Legislative Assembly, said that the public will go on strike if they don't have this service continued. So this is what we are doing in the Himalayas. Now, this is a snapshot of what probably is the world's largest PPP partnership with a neighboring state called Andhra Pradesh. Now, you can see this total lockdown from March 24th. So obviously our numbers have gone down. But even though the numbers have gone down, we were one of the very few healthcare, I won't say very few, that's not right. We were one of the many healthcare centers which continued to provide healthcare. Now, please look at the third column, specialist teleconsultations. And you can see we have already reached a staggering 1 million in this particular service alone. These numbers are not wrong. I checked, double checked again, though even to me it looks so awesome. The laboratory tests which we have done is 7.3 million laboratory tests, and all these labs are monitored remotely. We have a very intensive quality care center. We are shortly going to publish a paper on this. Now, this is the MEEK project or teleophthalmology. 115 existing rural vision centers were outsourced to a private player, namely the Apollo hospitals, about 2.5 years ago. I have my staff in each of these vision centers, and you can see the second column, the right one, cumulative, as of, this was April, I just didn't get the updated statistics, 350,000 fundus images were seen by 30 ophthalmologists in the city of Chennai. And believe me, 90% of these people, the turnaround time, the average turnaround time is 15 to 20 minutes. In 15 minutes, they get a color printout, digitally signed with an ophthalmologist report annotated, which even tells you that this is the diabetic retinopathy, hypertensive retinopathy, normal fundus, etc., etc. They get a printout. So this is what we have been doing now for the last 2 years. Spectacles are ordered, spectacles are received, and now we are in the final stages of negotiating with the company for use of drones, because surprisingly we find that it's difficult to get courier service in these remote areas, and we probably are looking at drones. We have a dashboard. This is again public money, so everything has to be totally transparent in real time. Any of you are most welcome to look at this dashboard. Now, of course, last 2.5 months, lockdown, the numbers have significantly fallen down, but nevertheless, it is still there. We have already catered to 1.4 million people. So multiplied by that by 2, that is the number of eyes we have seen. So these dashboards gives you considerable details: refraction check, spectacles ordered, spectacles issued. You can see the number is almost similar. In less than 98% of spectacles ordered are actually made, fabricated, and issued. This is a similar project, a smaller one, in India's most populated state called Uttar Pradesh. You can see here laboratory investigations, teleconsultations done, medical prescription, everything is available. I was very happy when 4 years ago, the University of Pittsburgh, they have a section called the Business of Humanity. It's a great concept saying that you can be humane and make money at the same time. There is nothing wrong in making money. On the contrary, if you really want to be humane, the people who are sponsoring the project have to make money. So again, this is a challenge we have taken. We isolated a tribal area, a very, very remote tribal area in the state of Gujarat. We went there twice, and of course, it took us about 1.5 years before we actually got the funding. We have done it. We did tell the University of Pittsburgh that it's going to be impossible for us to be self-sufficient in 3 years. So they have very kindly agreed to extend their philanthropy by another 2 years. But we are hoping that in another 2 years, we will be able to make it self-sufficient. We charge a very nominal rate, and we are trying to get about 80% of the expenses incurred back. 10 minutes ago, before I joined, I just downloaded this slide from Johns Hopkins, and you can see 12 million. Maybe by the time my talk is over, we would have struck 12 million people. So ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not, all of us know that the coronavirus is not going away. Maybe many countries have succeeded in flattening the curve. India probably has learned from the United States. The city where I live in alone accounts for 8% of India's positivity cases. But as Professor Aimike just now mentioned, for a country of 1,350 million people, I think it's not too bad. And the cooperation among the patients have been absolutely amazing. When I made this slide, I deliberately put the word cloud on telemedicine, hugging, touching closely, no social distancing, no physical distancing. So far as I'm concerned, I have enough data in the last 120 days to show that if I right-click on coronavirus, I should really get telemedicine. Telemedicine and coronavirus are inseparable. While most governments talk about vaccine, they are talking of spending trillions of dollars on development of a vaccine. It is equally true. One should not forget that for every single coronavirus infected patient, there are 95 other people who require health care for non-coronavirus problems. And because of the lockdown, because of travel restrictions, because the healthcare providers themselves are falling sick, they are not able to physically go and meet a doctor. Therefore, telemedicine is going to be in the integral part of the healthcare delivery system. I'm not talking of India, I'm talking of all over the world. And I strongly feel that it is not the biology of that strand of RNA whose genetic sequence we are reasonably sure about now. That is not the one which is causing the problem. The problem is because of the massive global measures being taken to contain rapid spread. It's always a trade-off. Do you have a lockdown and do you have a lockdown resulting in hundreds of millions of people not being able to carry on with a normal life? Or do you want to save lives? Global economy is taking a toss, and I think it's going to be several years before this is going to be attended to. March somehow seems to be something to do with telemedicine. It was on March 24th, 2000, that Bill Clinton, when he visited India as the president of the US, formally commissioned the world's first VSAT-enabled village hospital at Aragonda. Exactly 20 years and 24 hours later, the Medical Council of India formally notified an amendment to the Medical Council of India Act, which for the first time in the history of India formally legalized the practice of telemedicine. A major reason why telemedicine never really took off in India was a concern which most doctors had on the legality or otherwise. Again, by a coincidence, I don't know how many of you know, it was on March 12, 1876, that the world's first teleconsultation was made by Alexander Graham Bell. The world's first telephone call was a call for help. Watson, come here, I want you, said Bill, for Alexander Graham Bell when he spilled battery acid on himself. Therefore, telemedicine is not new. It has started even in the 19th century. Oh, sorry, something wrong with my slides. Okay, I've already mentioned to you that I think the single individual most responsible for the notification was the Global Transformation Officer. In India, health is a state subject, and though the government of India passed a notification, every state, like magic, within 72 hours of the government of India's notification, every state passed medical council. 33 states in India passed their own law saying, yes, we agree, please go ahead with teleconsultation. On the top right-hand side, you can see what is amazing, a national teleconsultation service. Though there are several private players, and the government has sort of been working on this for maybe a couple of years, the pandemic precipitated this, and you can see going live today at 12 noon. Today, of course, about 18 states, they have the national teleconsultation services. But then people still have some sort of resistance. Unfortunately, they seem to prefer the private player than the government. So the utilization is not that much. Immediately after the telemedicine notification was done, I am a past president of the Telemedicine Society of India, and we were able, led by the present team, we were able to get more than 140 volunteers. You won't believe it. They spent almost 14 to 16 hours a day. We were online almost, of course, I didn't take that much of time, but the younger people spent enormous amount of time. We prepared a training program, an online training program, and we started introducing this. Now, again, Apollo Hospital has also got into it. I have also prepared a telemedicine orientation program, totally online. Duration is 5 hours, which is what we have done. This is just a sample. It will take me several hours. Now, I still get, of course, during the earlier days of the pandemic, a minimum of 20 to 30 WhatsApp forwards every day from hospitals all over the country. People who thought that telemedicine is a dirty word, people who would not even associate with anybody involved in telemedicine, free video consultation with our experts for any illness, everything free. And you see advertisements, appeal to doctors, please enroll yourself to give consultations here, etc. In fact, many of my younger colleagues are worried that once the pandemic settles down, the public will get accustomed to a free teleconsultation, and who knows, this may become the gold standard, and in future, how are they going to make a living? This is the extent to which it has gone. NABH is the equivalent of JCI in the United States. We have the National Accreditation Board for Hospitals. Now, even they have announced digital health standards. In a couple of months, there is another association called QAI, Quality Accreditation Institute. I'm also a member of that committee. We are working on this. We notified this about a few days ago. And I think in about a week, in about 2-3 weeks from now, the full details will be worked out. And we are sure that within a year, there will be institutions wanting to be formally accredited by an external audit, by an external agency. So this is the amazing advances which are taking place all in the last 4 months. Now, I could go on and on, show any number of slides like this, Rajasthan government, Maharashtra government, etc. I just want to spend a minute on the middle one. You can see government launches Arogya Setu IVRS platform. To the best of my knowledge, and this has been shown in CNN TV, BBC TV, etc., 120 million people have already downloaded this application. It's a fantastic app, open source, built in collaboration with 3 or 4 of the top IT companies in the country. Today, I have also, all of us have been literally asked to download it. And when I just press on it, of course, your GPS location must be on all the time. And I think they have even come up, there's a lot of argument whether it's an invasion of privacy, but under the circumstances, I think it's okay. Today, I can find, I know exactly that there are 29 people who have coronavirus within 300 millimeters of where I am. So this is the application. Plans are already underfoot to see if this extensive platform can eventually be converted into a healthcare platform. And again, a committee has been appointed, and I'm sure it's going to happen in my lifetime, where at the moment, like your social security card, we have what is called the Aadhaar card. I think the Aadhaar card was also a chapter was there in Professor Aimike's book. Sir, the Aadhaar card is being worked upon, and I think every single citizen of India, 1,350 million people, maybe it will take 5 years, but it is going to happen, will also have a unique health identifier, which means private hospital or government hospital, center or state, Andaman and Nicobar Islands or Delhi, it doesn't matter, anywhere within the geographical constraints of India, you will be able to retrieve your healthcare record from the cloud. This is going to totally revolutionize healthcare. Again, Apollo has been very active, Sanjeevani, Telehealth Seva for non-COVID patients, etc. I want to spend a minute on this slide. On the lower left, you see All India Institute of Medical Sciences, the showpiece of Indian healthcare. We have nothing which any other country has got. This is the showpiece of India. So they have recently, they did have a telemedicine department which was lying dormant, but now they have reopened it, and for the last 4 months, their OP was closed because Delhi is one of the most affected areas. Everything was done virtually. Now look at the right side of the screen. On the right side of the screen is what probably is now taking place every second. Maybe thousands are taking place any second. I'm just going to read it out. My son is 1 year, 5 months old. He's a bit cranky and having fever. Can I give him some particular medicine, Metformin syrup? And the doctor replies, I will be providing services via teleconsultation. You are requested to transfer the consultation amount to my account, etc., etc. So this is what is happening. The government of India, understanding the pandemic, have actually also mentioned that you can use WhatsApp, you can use Google Face and many other products which normally would not have been used for a teleconsultation. These are again examples. Another very interesting thing which is developed is political organizations. They have got into telemedicine. I have always been saying that political will is the single most important thing to drive telemedicine. You can see here photographs of political parties which have made their own telemedicine app, and they are launching it. In fact, a competition has now come between various political parties. 6 months ago, if I was giving a talk, and I've given several talks on the use of robots and drones, I would have had to download these slides from the internet. Today, I'm very happy that people from other countries can download slides from India. The top 2 slides you can see, I'm also a part of the Department of Biotechnology. I am part of a committee which evaluates proposals for funding. And believe me, the Corona Accord, we have got 739 applications for funding. The government has set apart $250 million for funding for projects, Make in India initiative, Digital India, etc. Robots have been successfully made and deployed all made by boys and girls 20, 25 years old, indigenous, 100% indigenous, at 1/10 the cost of robots in China and Japan. Necessity is a mother of invention. And I think at least 50 to 100 hospitals in India are today using robots. The slide at the bottom shows drones. Drones totally made again by young boys and girls, startup companies. On the left-hand side, you can see in Bengaluru, which again is a hotspot, a loudspeaker attached to a drone, and the drone going up a multi-story building and in the local language telling the people, do this, don't do that. Pizzas being delivered through a drone. I mean, all this I read about in California, I read about in the United States, but this is what the pandemic has done to us. Now, clinical guidelines, this being a mixed audience, I'm obviously not going into the details, excepting to tell you that today guidelines like this are available. And as a medical doctor, I think it's amazing what the government of India and state governments are doing. Every 4 days, literally, or 5 days, they're updating this. The weightage given to different questions asked is being changed. AI is being used. All this is being translated into 30 local languages. We have a category called ASHA, Associated Social Health Activist, which has been in existence for maybe about 8 to 10 years. All of these people are computer literate. They have a tablet which they give. They go to the remotest part of India, areas where the nearest bus stand is probably 5 kilometers away. These people using a dongle, you may not really have sophisticated connectivity at that time, or they enter all this, they come back to a place where there's connectivity, upload it in the cloud. And Big Brother in Delhi is watching this, and in real time, millions of information is available. This is analyzed just like Google Analytics. India has got its own analytics, the public health system. They're able to look at trends, at what is happening, etc. And this is what is happening. You can see this. I obviously don't expect you to read this slide, but just imagine this in the local language. Imagine this with animations. Imagine this with photographs and figures, so that a school dropout can understand generalized weakness, fatigue, body pains, NSAIDs, etc., nausea and vomiting, at home, isolate yourself from everybody else, etc., etc. All this today is available, and this is the importance of telehealth in COVID-19. The entire purpose of COVID-19 is to reduce footfall to the hospital. This, of course, is a borrowed slide. There are a few places in India which do this. Temperature scanning, of course, no, the good old-fashioned thermometer which I used to put as a house surgeon, and it says, under my tongue and under the armpit, is obsolete even in a village. We have thermal guns everywhere, Bluetooth enabled, so that temperature is recorded. Now, this is also slowly happening in India. As you can see today, you can totally screen a patient. You can virtually, physically examine a patient, get all the information you want with tele-examination. Oximeters, the cost of oximeters have gone up 5-fold in the last couple of weeks, because people are realizing that oxygenation status evaluation is very critical. This is the stethoscope which is starting to come in India, and I foresee that in my lifetime, stethoscope with earpieces dangling between your ears is going to be a Jurassic Park, is going to be historic. These digital stethoscopes amplify lung and heart sounds, transmitted to you. Multiple people can hear the heart sounds, so that you don't depend on one single individual. Ultrasounds are becoming smaller and smaller. You can fit into your pocket. I've always spoken about a hospital in your pocket, a doctor in your pocket, a laboratory in your pocket. These were all, words which we use cliche, but today it is actually happening. Now, most countries have a shortage of healthcare providers, and if they themselves need to be quarantined, it will lead to a disastrous situation. This has happened worldwide. In India also, many of my own students, many of my colleagues, several doctors whom I know, unfortunately, many have passed away because of the coronavirus infection. Now, respiratory clinics manned by trained paramedical staff can be set up in remote locations, hospital on wheels. In fact, we have just funded projects for viral laboratories which are on wheels, which will go from place to place, etc. Doctors and specialists can do virtual teleconsults. Now remember, even if a doctor is quarantined, he continues to be mentally and physically alert. Absolutely normal. A quarantined doctor can evaluate 50, 75, 100 patients per day. I couldn't resist the temptation of putting up the photograph on the left. If you see the date, 30th May 2002. 18 years ago, we were doing teleconsultations, or at least a few of us were doing teleconsultation. This is a neurological examination to exclude a facial palsy. The people never took telemedicine seriously. But then, as Walter Hugo said, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. For somebody passionate about telemedicine, who's biased in favor of telemedicine, I may very easy for me to say start telemedicine. There are challenges, many challenges. It takes time to establish the necessary technology infrastructure, recruit and train virtual providers, educate patients. Our job has been made easy. We were talking of behavioral modification. We were talking of technology acceptance. There are so many erudite, learned, so-called learned papers published all over the world. But today, ladies and gentlemen, a strand of RNA has made the patient and the doctor realize that virtual healthcare or contactless medicine is the name of the game, and this is how it's going to be. Resources need to be mobilized to build infrastructure and capacity. Patients need to be encouraged to take telehealth options. I have always mentioned that it is a medical doctor who must be the ambassador. If you don't believe in telemedicine, it is going to be impossible to convince your patient to deploy telemedicine. So I would spend my time and energy in trying to convince my own colleagues that telemedicine has to be done. Digital health is bringing about a real revolution, shifting the point of care to where it should have been all this time. The patients are bored. Why should a patient come to a hospital for health care? Why not the hospital go to the patient? Until recently, it was difficult. Today, it is technically possible. We now have reached a figure of almost 10,000 teleconsultations per day. What started with about 50 to 100 per day, we were touching about 6,000, 7,000 late last year. Today, we have seen a dramatic increase. And this is not just Apollo, this is most other organizations. Before I close, I just want to spend a minute or two on the Department of Biotechnology, just to give you an illustration of how the world in India is changing. I used to go to Delhi at least once a month for a one-day, two-day meeting where we would think tank, brains trust, who's who, if you want to call it, about a committee of 17 to 19 people would meet, evaluate submissions, filtered initially, etc., etc. Today, we are doing this online from morning 8:30 to evening 8:30, almost 2 days a week. We are online and we call the people who are presenting these cases, shortlisted people, most of them senior professors, asking for funding for $100,000 to $200,000. They present it, we evaluate it, everything is done online. In fact, the committee members somehow have taken a liking for it. We have become addicted to it, and I foresee that in the future, this is going to be the normal. I've already said goodbye to Delhi. I don't think I'll be going to Delhi again. Everything will be on my screen. So this is the real world. India is a land of innovations. No doubt every country there are innovations. This is the real India. Look at this. A lady wearing a mask with a glass screen in front of her and a patient about 6 feet away. And on the lower left, this is called innovation at its best. This man obviously cannot afford a digital stethoscope. So what does he do? He extends the stethoscope tubing by the mandated physical distancing, 6 feet stethoscope tubing, and his assistant places the stethoscope on the chest. Look at the photograph on the right. I want to examine the throat of the patient. I'm scared. These are all containment areas, hot zones. I don't want the patient to come next to me. So what do? I shine the torch. I increase the battery. I get a new torch. I get a more powerful torch. I focus it into the interior. So ladies and gentlemen, this may not be common, but will this be the face-to-face consultation of the future? If this is so, why not telemedicine? Reports every day we get reports, 500% rise in healthcare teleconsultation in India. This was the Quality and Accreditation Institute I was speaking about. It's already started. State governments have woken up. The Punjab government has instituted an expert committee. I'm also a member of that committee. And over the last couple of weeks, a phenomenal team is put together. What we have done is we have got literature from all over the world. We have read the literature and decided to change, customize, tailor-make, etc. The intricate details which we have gone into. This is almost the first preliminary report, I think, is about 240 pages. A high-power committee will evaluate it. And as per the government of Punjab, by October, they want to have a full-fledged, who knows, maybe a department of telemedicine, which will be a subdivision in the Ministry of Health and Welfare. This is what is happening throughout the country. Another very good news for the healthcare providers of this country is, following in the footsteps of the United States, IRDAI, the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, has instructed all healthcare insurance company people to recognize telemedicine in their health insurance policies and to provide reimbursement. Of course, it will take several months before it is actually implemented. Unlike the United States, in India, even though the numbers are steadily increasing, I would guess, as a guesstimate, not more than 30–35% of the country have some sort of insurance coverage, may not be through a private insurance company, either the government or the state government or organized employer, etc. Now, this is the National Telemedicine Service, which I was talking to you about. Patient to doctor, 18 states have already adopted it. 60,000 consultations, of course, which is a very, very small number. Probably this will get increased. Before I conclude, I just want to give you some statistics. Pre-COVID and post-COVID, my colleagues have been very kind enough to provide me with this data, which I had asked them for. In the 6 months preceding the COVID, you can see we did 1.2 million consultations at one single public-private partnership. 4 months of intensive lockdown, but even then numbers have come and we did 8.1 million. What is much more important is the telemedicine consultation in Uttar Pradesh, column number 1, 2, 3, 4. From 60,000, it has become 30,000, a 5-fold increase. Ask Apollo. This is something which we started about a few months ago, never really, escalated it. Today we have escalated it, a 7 times increase. From 1,000, it has become 7,600. Wherever the telephone is used, we can see an increase of at least 5 to 7-fold. Again, during the pandemic alone, we have formed a new product called askapollo.com or Ask Apollo, 24/7. 24/7, sorry, not Ask Apollo, 24/7 Apollo, and you can see 12 million people have so far taken the COVID risk scan using AI. Of course, Apollo Hospital is not the only organization. You have a government and you have many, many organizations which are doing this. Huge numbers of people have taken this, and when there is a significant risk, they are strongly encouraged. In fact, they are followed up and asked to get themselves tested. So this is the way technology is going. I cannot help but become a little emotional. For somebody who started telemedicine as a hobby in 1996, today we have the largest 24/7 medical response center in Hyderabad. We have another company called Apollo Telehealth Services, which is a for-profit commercial arm of the company. We have a CEO and a staff of a very senior staff and middle and junior staff. We had almost 3,500 people, about 400 permanent employees. The rest are on specific projects. I'm sure every one of you are aware of TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, a world-renowned multinational company with head office in India. I think they have about 27,000 employees in the US, 75% of whom are Americans. They have announced that what is going to happen in the next 2–3 years, and this is not just TCS, most of the big companies in India, many of them are advertised saying their office spaces are now available for rent. My son-in-law who works in Adobe, He has been told by his company that till December end, he will work from home. Of course, my son works in Google in Mountain View. Google has said, next year we'll see, and you need to get permission to come to office. This is a slide which I've been using for several years. I never in my lifetime thought that are we ready for a hospital which has no patients. I am ready, and I think this is the future. Hospitals of the future will be confined to surgical procedures, polytrauma and things like that. The medical wards, most of it, laboratories and so on. Even CT scans are going to become mobile. We already have mobile CT scans, portable, and you will see that instead of the patient coming to a physical brick and mortar hospital, whatever services are offered by the hospital, 80% of them will come to where you are. So we will be shifting the point of care from a hospital to an office. You will have health kiosks, AI, semi-automated, automated kiosks with the robots. All this is going to happen in India. This is what is going to happen. And why am I so optimistic about it? I'm so optimistic about it because no less a person than the Prime Minister of the country, on at least 4 different occasions, all the 4 occasions when he addressed the nation, he specifically spent a minute, 90 seconds on telemedicine. He is advocating the use of telemedicine, and if the Prime Minister is personally talks about telemedicine, I think the government will fall suit. And once we have the support of the government, telemedicine is going to take off in a big way. Thou shalt digitally transform. In fact, I have 10 commandments. For lack of time, I'm not enumerating the 10 commandments. My favorite quotation is that of Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest, not the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change. And to paraphrase Winston Churchill, never ever let a good crisis go waste. Confucius said, the journey with 1,000 miles begins with the first step. I think we have not taken the first step. We probably have gone several miles ahead. And this is what the benefits. It is very sad that we require benefits from something like the coronavirus. We are going to conquer the coronavirus. But as a byproduct is going to be telehealth, which is going to become absolutely normal and part of our daily life. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts.
That was fantastic, sir, as always. As always. Give us your screen back.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I
know, I have the same problem. Do you have 2 or 3 more minutes for a couple of questions?
Yeah, certainly. No, absolutely no.
You want to stick your hand up? Jake will look for you. Maybe we'll give a couple of people a couple of questions for the doctor.
I hope it is not too long. I mean, it's always difficult to stop me when I'm talking. I could go on and on and on.
You were fantastic.
We can start with this one question that came up in the chat from Madeline. She asks, what are some of the pros and cons of telemedicine from the point of view of the doctor? Is it tougher to do consultations online versus in person for communication? Is there a silver lining in not needing to commute to remote locations to practice?
That's a very good question. The answer to that is there is no single answer. It is entirely contextual. I mean, it depends entirely on the circumstances of the teleconsultation, how comfortable the teleconsultant is, how comfortable the patient is, how good the connectivity is, how good the peripheral medical devices are, etc., etc., etc. The message which I give to all my consultants is, even today, with all the data analytics based on your gut feeling, if you are not comfortable, you want to put your hand on the abdomen. I'll give you an example. I'm an old-fashioned doctor who entered medical school 53 years ago. I would still like to do a rectal examination to find out if the prostate is enlarged. Whereas a young doctor today will think that a pelvic ultrasound, a sophisticated 4D pelvic ultrasound, gives him all the information he wants, and he tells the patient, look, you require a surgery, your ultrasound shows an enlargement of the prostate. He is not wrong, I am not wrong. So it depends entirely on the individual. Now, as a patient, if I were a patient, I obviously am a fanatic about telemedicine. But nevertheless, if I am a patient and on the screen, a doctor tells me, you have got a brain tumor, it's in the medulla oblongata, you need a stereotactic biopsy, that, this, something, shall I fix the date for surgery? I don't think I will accept it. I would still like to physically meet the patient, meet the doctor, ask 150 questions, get the answers. The body language, the ability to empathize, sympathize with the doctor is very, very important. Tender loving care is still required. Technology cannot replace your ability to commiserate with the patient. So the answer to your question, madam, is yes and no. It's entirely contextual based. On the other hand, lockdown, not to forget the lockdown. If the nearest super specialist is 200 miles away, it's going to take me 3 hours, 2 hours to go, 2 hours to come back. It's a refill, it's a review. I've already seen him. It doesn't make sense at all. So it's entirely contextual.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Can I ask? Probably it depends, but in general, is there a possibility of providing better care at a lower overall cost by expanding telemedicine, assuming that the infrastructure is in place?
Absolutely. There are enough studies, and we ourselves, unfortunately, I have not published this, but there is evidence, good, solid scientific evidence to share that a big project is extremely cost effective. Now, we have submitted a report to the government of Himachal Pradesh where we showed that over a period of time, over a period of 3 years, I don't know enough of finance to tell you about amortization, that, this, etc., but depreciation and all that. But over a period of 3 years, we have shown that the cost for delivering a teleconsultation is less than $2 at a height of 14,500 feet in the Himalayas. There is no question about it. And I think the way to go would be to identify pockets, populations, 10,000 people, 50,000 people, 100,000 people, have a team of teleconsultants look after a specific population. That way it is extremely cost effective. The doctor is happy because he is paid not on a per case, he is paid a very good salary. So he is assured of his salary, whether he sees patients or not. The patient pays a very nominal subscription. The huge numbers, the number game, the more the numbers, the less the cost. I totally agree with you.
So, and that argues too for shifting from telemedicine to telehealth, to reorienting our whole healthcare system to be a healthcare system, not a medical system.
Absolutely.
We've got time for one more. We've got one last question. Going once, going twice.
Somebody's lifted their hands, Catherine.
Thank you. I wanted to get your opinion on the transition that the United States has made, that for years you could not have appointments with doctors reimbursed if they were done remotely or by telephone. So if you were out of state and you wanted to contact your doctor and your doctor was willing to give a telephone consultation or a video one, the insurance company actually wouldn't reimburse it. You had to pay out of pocket. And then suddenly with the lockdown with COVID-19, suddenly the insurance companies now pay for all remote appointments, which they would not do prior to that. Do you expect that the insurance companies in the United States to revert back to only reimbursing appointments that happen in person? Or do you think that the United States will now begin to authorize telemedicine as a valid form of consultation?
Madam, you must ask your congressman that question. I honestly wouldn't, I'm not competent to answer it. But having said that, let me tell you from a behavioral point of view, it doesn't matter whether you're in America or India or Africa, it doesn't matter at all. The color of your skin doesn't matter at all. Once you're accustomed to something, and you find that it is in your interest, it's good, I think that is going to prevail. I mean, I'm sure the congressmen and the people who are in charge of this advocating or promoting such legislation, one, there will be a hue and cry all over the world if after you give somebody a cake to eat for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, and after 2 years you're going to remove the cake. Nobody would like it. So my gut feeling is it will continue, but of course they will put stronger measures in place. Right now, certain things, HIPAA compliance, as if, for example, you would never have ever thought the United States would agree to Skype being used. I mean, the Americans are paranoid about privacy and security. You would never ever have thought you can use Skype for teleconsultation. I understand that that is now used, that is now permissible. So certain things like that may be withdrawn. But my gut feeling is it will continue. The advantage India has is, in the earlier years, we used to follow the West. After that, the stage came when we used to piggyback them. The third stage came when we used to leapfrog. But now I say we don't leapfrog anymore. How far can a frog leap? So we now pole vault. We have learned from all the mistakes. We have learned from everything in Western countries. So we no longer leapfrog, we pole vault. So India has started off its telemedicine by unambiguously stating that all the I'm a licensed practitioner in the Tamil Nadu Medical Council, which is an integral part of the Republic of India. And therefore, I can do anything I want as a healthcare provider without re-registering in any one of the 33 states or the 9 union territories.
Thank you.
Doctor, thank you so much. It was just incredible, as you always are. And I am
Thank you, sir. Were the slides okay? Was the audio video okay?
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So you can either take a nap, have your breakfast, go to work, and we'll all go home and have dinner.
Thank you. Thank you. Somehow I don't consider it as work. That's all the younger people here. I want to emphasize that I have never considered whatever I have done as work. When people ask me how many hours a day do you work, I can't answer that question. I enjoy what I'm doing. I think that's the most important thing. Once you enjoy what you're doing, the question of work does not come at all.
I think that's one of the many things you and I have in common. So good night, doctor. Or good morning.
You, sir. Thank you once again for all of you. I look forward someday to meeting some of you, at least physically, I hope.
We'll get you to New York someday soon.
Thank you, sir.
Doctor. Good night. Jake, do you have any last words for the team? Are you still with us, Jake? Maybe not. Anybody have any last words? Well, I hope, I warned you, he could have rolled for another hour. So he was respectful of your time, but he's a once in a lifetime. He really, if you had to pick one person who invented telehealth, it was him. So I hope you appreciated it. I hope you enjoyed it. I know he enjoyed speaking to you. So I wish you all a good night. And next week we'll move on to Central Park. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.